Hello, everyone. We are the Sequel Seekers. My name is Chris.
My name is Adam.
And I am Robin.
And we today are doing a podcast. A little bit different from our normal gameplay footage. Today we have finished up the BioShock series, and we're going to be talking through sort of our thoughts and opinions on all three of those games in an audio format. So some nice listening for your ear holes, I suppose. Directly into your brain.
Burly voices.
Yeah.
So basically, kind of a heads up for what you can expect. We're going to do like 2-sentence summaries of each of the games, but we are going to be going full spoilers when we get into the nitty-gritty.
Right.
If you aren't aware of anything about BioShock 1, 2, or Infinite, we have done full playthroughs of all three of those games, and you can check them out on our channel, and then swing on by when you're done with those if you're afraid of being spoiled on stuff from listening to us. But we're going to start off with just a quick synopsis of the games themselves, where they came from and who made them, and then a little bit of the plot points, and then we'll get into talking more of what we think and less of what you could go watch. So
So just a recap of everything so we can jog our memories. BioShock 1 starts with you being introduced to Rapture, right? Your character basically has amnesia. He's unfamiliar with his territory, and meets Atlas, who acts as your tour guide, essentially. He leads you around Rapture, basically teaches you the game as well as the plot points and the situation. Eventually you find out that Atlas is actually the bad guy. He was mind controlling you the whole time. You kill, what's his face?
Andrew Ryan.
Andrew Ryan. He was the original antagonist. And then you flip it around and you go after Atlas, essentially. BioShock 1, you start as the Big Daddy. BioShock 2, sorry. You start as the Big Daddy, which is nice because the Big Daddy was a great character. It's about basically looking for your little sister, who turns out to be your daughter, and also the antagonist's daughter, Lamb. Lamb, what was it? Sophia Lamb. You rescue the sister. Basically, Rapture ends by the end of it. You just essentially destroy it all.
Yeah.
And then that ends the story of Rapture, and you start into BioShock Infinite, where much like BioShock 1, you start with not really understanding your situation or your location or anything. So you're guided around the world a little bit, looking for this girl who's Elizabeth. You eventually find Elizabeth. You try to escape with Elizabeth. Shit goes wrong. You have to go after the main antagonist, who's Comstock. And then a bunch of time bullshit happens.
Pretty good summary.
And I don't know how it ends. It's fairly convoluted.
Basically, it ends with your main character being the antagonist and the same person at a split point in time, and you have to kill him back then to end the future.
And Elizabeth's gone.
Elizabeth's gone.
Yeah, so I mean, that's basically the run-through of all three. We'll start off with BioShock 1 as far as what we thought of it story-wise.
Yeah.
As the introduction of the whole series, it's kind of focused on showing you the world, the setting, and not so much on characters or whatever. You really only encounter 3 different characters who are named?
Serious characters. I mean, they're all the boss characters or the main enemies that you fight, boss characters. But
or the various voxophone characters.
And the voxophone voices, but for the most part, you're only really dealing with yourself, a silent protagonist, Andrew Ryan, and Atlas, in terms of who actually does the most talking.
Who's driving the story,
yeah. And all of the boss characters are underneath Atlas, pretty much, so they serve to be a roadblock for you trying to, in the first half of the game at least, get to Andrew Ryan.
Yeah.
And they have their own personalities and quirks and stuff, but they aren't really, I wouldn't consider them a major part of the story.
Yeah, they're not a focal point or anything.
I didn't really see them as even a character. I saw them more as the obstacle. I feel like BioShock 1, it was, this company's one of the first games.
Yeah.
And I feel as though it wasn't really about the world, because we didn't learn much about the history of Rapture. I mean, I'm sure if you explore the environment, you find the voxophones, whatever, you find information. But I feel like it was more you got to experience the environment of Rapture. But
Yeah.
I didn't feel like by the end of 1 that I knew much about Rapture as a world until we hit BioShock 2.
And I mean, I don't think that's that big of a deal for me personally, just because it'll be a lot of information. Like they obviously had a lot like planned as far as the city of Rapture goes, but to like bombard the player with all that random knowledge that doesn't really do anything with the actual gameplay could be a little overwhelming.
That's true. Yeah, they did that in Infinite, and it was a lot to try to be like,
Right.
oh, here's a statue of this. This is the whole entire history of Rapture, how it was founded, how it was developed.
Yeah, like imagine if Infinite was 2 games, like BioShock 1 and 2. You know, they could focus on building the world and then focus on a storyline instead.
Right.
Doing both at once.
I think it was good on them for setting up BioShock 1 in that way.
Yeah.
Because it would have taken away from what they were trying to accomplish with the narrative in terms of the like what exactly happens to your character. If there was too much going on and they were throwing too much lore at you, it would have distracted from the pretty cool story idea that they had that they used to introduce this world to us.
Right.
The twist that they had in this game was actually really well done.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I think we all enjoyed it for what it was.
I love
You get to you're playing this game and you're following the tutorial voice in your head like you would in any other game.
Yeah. Especially since you don't really know the environment, right? He's telling you about it, so you're just focusing on that.
Exactly. And you reach your goal, and then it turns out the tutorial voice in your head is actually like malicious and has been using you as a tool to accomplish their own goal.
Yeah.
Like and then
in turn using the player.
Yeah.
It's sort of like we all go through games as it's a path, I follow it, that's what I do as
you
as
blindly
a gamer,
follow. Yeah.
As a gamer, and it just turns out that you really didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because you're being controlled this whole time, and
Yeah. You're getting controlled as your character in the game, but you're also like getting controlled as the player because he's telling you to do stuff. And you're like, okay,
congratulations, you played yourself.
Yeah. You played yourself.
And then I mean, granted, it's not like the story changes a whole ton after you realize that you're being mind controlled. It's still a story of revenge, but you feel a little bit more
bad guy.
personally connected to that revenge because you were like, hey, this guy played me.
Yeah.
As a player, he played me, the player. And so I'm going to go kill him now. That's my choice.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. The whole twist of everything. Yeah, I mean, the change of narrative didn't really change the gameplay that much, really.
No.
It just kind of...
It was just more of
It was a different name.
more of a mindfuck to really get you thinking. More than anything else.
I remember just sitting there, like the scene where your character kills Andrew Ryan
with a 5-iron.
To the eye socket. That was, first of all, it was pretty brutal. Second of all, I just remember sitting there in just like shock. I was like, damn, that's crazy. Like, I never would have seen that coming, kind of thing. I think that's really smart for them to, for Irrational Games, 2K Boston, whatever you want to call them, to be able to accomplish something like that with the little pedigree that they had at the time. I don't even know if they made any other games before they did BioShock.
They had System Shock, right?
No, they didn't do System Shock 1 and 2.
It was just like a spiritual successor.
Spiritual successor to System Shock.
A lot of S's, sorry.
Later on, they made like Thief.
Oh,
Thief
yeah.
I think they only made Thief 2, actually, but still, like, BioShock 1 was one of their first titles.
I'm pretty sure they were a developer since like 97 or something, but I don't actually know their early games.
Yeah, I don't either.
So, at the very least, this was like their first big game, at least.
Their big break.
Yeah, the big break.
And seriously big break, too, because people are obsessed with these games. And people,
it has a cult following.
Especially
the first two games.
Definitely does.
Infinite has like a pretty big general following, but like BioShock 1 and 2 has a lot of diehard fans.
Yeah. What do you think about BioShock 2 then, in terms of what it tried to do with its story?
I liked it for the most part because it used basically like the coolest character concept from BioShock 1, which is the Big Daddies.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of capitalizes on... The players assume to know more about Rapture at this point for BioShock 2, so they get to use that with their story. They don't have to spend a lot of time going over like the whole of Rapture. They could focus just on the Big Daddy story. Like, where do the little sisters come from or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was nice that they didn't have to like work too hard at that. As far as the story itself goes, I think it was all right.
I didn't think it was as good as BioShock 1 personally.
Yeah.
I feel like it was more like the second half of BioShock 1 where it was like, hey, this was taken from you, go get it back kind of a thing. And then more developed along the way. There was a lot more character development in terms of those characters that you encounter throughout the world seemed more whole than in the first. In the first game, it was like a guy behind a door, a guy over the loudspeaker. While in the second game, they had a physical character that you could interact with, and there were a lot of choices of kill them or don't kill them.
In the first game, there was only like Andrew Ryan and Atlas that you ever actually saw.
And you didn't even really see Atlas. You saw hulked out Atlas.
Yeah, you just saw the dude one. Yeah, and in BioShock 2, they actually had like character models, like you said, which was nice because it put an actual face to the voice.
And it put people in the world too. Yeah, it wasn't just splicers, hyped up drug addicts. Zombies. It was a character that had survived in Rapture.
Yeah.
But I also thought it was cool that there were a lot of hints to the world that you could observe. Like in one of the first parts of the game, you see a Big Daddy outside riveting up a hole in a wall, and you say, "Oh, Big Daddies were
maintenance men."
Like maintenance people, and so that's a little like, boom, there's a piece of lore for you. Now you know what they're here for.
Yeah, I do think it was a good idea on the developers' part to like focus on a character because there's a lot in Rapture. Right?
There's a ton.
Like, being able to just focus on Big Daddies is nice. I mean, there's a lot just with that. If you put all the other stuff in, like the development of Rapture or life before BioShock 1 or stuff like that, that would just be like an endless stream of information.
Yeah.
It'd be a little too much.
At least
in my
an
opinion,
endless... It'd be too much to shove in a player's face. I mean, obviously, all the information is there.
Yeah, they have it on the
look
voxel
for it.
phones,
Yeah, it's all in the voxel phones. If you want to hear about Andrew Ryan setting up, like in BioShock 2, if you want to hear about the conflict between Sophia Lamb and Andrew Ryan that led to sort of Sophia Lamb being the sort of character that she is, you can just listen to all of the voxel phones and you'll hear Andrew Ryan's propaganda speeches versus Sophia Lamb's propaganda speeches. You'll hear them from some of the other named characters, like that lady who was behind the door that gives you the key to restart the train. Like in the first choice we made, whether or not to kill her. Like, she has a ton of information because she's in with Lamb as well, and it's all there. But it's not, like you said, it's not in your face. Yeah. And it made that story, I think, was a pretty straightforward narrative from point A to point B. But in comparison to BioShock 1, and I think the reason that you both might have said, or at least my rationale for why you both said that you didn't really enjoy it as much as the first one, is because it was extended over the entire life of the game, as opposed to having two distinct movements. Like, in BioShock 1, you hit the point where you learn that Atlas has been playing you, and it's almost like the pedal turns over one more time and you get like a second...
It reignites the game.
You get like an oomph back into the second half. Yeah. In this one, there's a moment where that could have happened, in where you discover the little sister you're searching for is actually your own daughter, like biological daughter, with Sophia Lamb, but... It didn't have the same impact as the first one.
It kind of just like gradually told you about it. It was like, oh, by the way, is this your daughter? Yeah. It's like, oh, wow.
They did have that moment where you find her and she's on the bed and she, Sophia Lamb strangles your daughter and Kat, and you pass out and you sort of come back and your daughter's in a big sister suit now. So that's kind of the moment. Sort of like the first game. I feel like they tried.
But that was so late.
It was not.
Yeah. That was the last gameplay sequence. That was the last boss rush.
But it was also not as powerful as hey, you just got completely played, and instead it's like, oh, I guess I'm back. I feel like they still try to do the same thing though, even if it was really late.
I agree. They did do it late, like you said. But I do think that they tried to make that little cinematic moment the same as in BioShock 1, where you beat Andrew Ryan to death. Yeah. It just wasn't as impactful.
It definitely didn't play it as much, at least in my mind.
It didn't. I mean, it didn't really change much, right? No. Like in BioShock 1, you see that cinematic and everything changes. In this, it's just like, oh, okay, I didn't actually reach my daughter yet. Yeah. I have to keep going.
Yes, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And then BioShock 3 was
Yeah. Now we come to Infinite. I
now
guess.
we come
And
to
Infinite
the real talking point, which we'll try to deal with as best as we can because there's a lot. There's a lot to BioShock 3. The world hits you right in the face.
Yeah.
With propaganda and statues and
sides.
ripped Benjamin Franklin's.
Yeah. Huge founding fathers.
It's just it really. I feel like they tried to adjust the amount of story that went into the game, and I think it may have worked out better for people coming into the series at 3 because it was a new FPS and the FPS genre was really popular when 3 came out. And so people were like, hey, first-person shooter looks really cool, I'm going to play it. And therefore, the story had to just get, kind of pushed in their face.
They needed it so... Or they made it so the player didn't need to have played the first 2 games.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think, they drew a lot of stuff from BioShock 1 and 2 as far as, plot progression goes, but I feel like the game is how I mentioned before in BioShock 2, how they just focused on the Big Daddy story, because any more would be too convoluted. Well, I think in Infinite, the lack of focusing on, one thing made it really, there was a lot of information.
Yeah.
Right?
It took too long for them to find the thing that they wanted to focus on.
Yeah.
And then when they hit it, it was something that made everything a lot more complex. I thought that I actually enjoyed what they were trying to do in terms of the way that they built up the types of characters that were in each game between 1, 2, and Infinite. In Infinite, I really liked Elizabeth. I thought Elizabeth was a really great addition. Having another model in the world that talked to you as opposed to just a picture in your ear, a picture talking in your ear, was a really good change. The world felt more lived in. There were a lot more people you could physically interact with that weren't just people trying to shoot you in the head.
Yeah. No citizens.
But it was all over the place, and they hit a point sort of 2/3 of the way through, I guess, where they introduced the concept of tears and multiple realities and time travel and stuff.
Yeah.
And that became the new focus of the game, and that concept is so over the top that I don't think it was the right choice, and it made it a lot more difficult for me to stay with it.
Yeah.
From that point forward.
I think they were trying to recapture what they did in BioShock 1 with the turnaround, the plot.
Yeah, the mindfuck thing.
But it was too much, right? Because originally it was just exploring Columbia, and figuring out what is even happening. And then the quote unquote plot turn is the whole time travel rift.
Which isn't
stuff.
really a
but
twist.
It's just, what's happening?
It's always been there, and you've known about it. But,
yeah.
And then it becomes a plot point. Whereas in the beginning of the game, it would have been more interesting. And granted, the tears are sort of their solution to connect the 2 games and solve a lot of. It's sort of like their plot glue. You know?
Yeah.
And so I can understand why they did it, but without it, because Chris, I know through the first half of the story, you were pretty into it, and because it was a world and you were exploring it, and there were all these things, and you had a goal, and then all of a sudden you're in the third step through,
we've gone
third
through
reality,
3 realities within 25 minutes,
and people's noses are bleeding.
But you're just confused. You're not sure. We had this discussion. If you go back and watch one of our playthroughs, a pretty late episode of Infinite, we hit the point where we're having this discussion of, okay, wait, which reality are we in though?
Yeah.
Because we went to this one, then we got sent back to this one, but did we get sent back to that one?
Yeah,
it just confuses.
I remember just saying don't think too hard about it because it's not going to be worth it.
Yeah.
But that's a thing that you want to understand the game. At least I really love understanding the world I'm in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I did too, because I was so invested up until that point.
Right.
I was coming into recordings going, I can't wait to play this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Then you get really deep and figured out that the tears were 2-dimensional and people stole the ideas of vigors and plasmids from each other 40 years apart. And it's what?
Yeah. In a different dimension, 40 years
in
apart,
the future.
you can see through a dimension and ahead in time.
They were just stealing ideas from each other. It's
in a circle, yeah.
It's bizarre.
The more you learned, the more confusing it was.
But overall, I thought 3 generally cool concept, when I was first playing through it, I definitely thought it was interesting and new, very, very different, even if it was confusing.
Yeah.
I still felt invested as the character of Booker DeWitt. I still felt like I want to save Elizabeth. I want to kill this guy, even if I'm confused as hell.
Yeah.
Because Booker's confused in the game as well. He doesn't know what's happening. He just wants to save Elizabeth.
Which is like in BioShock 1, where you're confused about Rapture.
Yeah.
Or whatever's happening, or Atlas, or everything like that.
Yeah.
It's just similarities. But, what was I going to say? I forget.
Good.
If it comes back to you, you can just bring it up.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
The podcast in our outro. Oh, that one thing, yeah.
Oh, by the way.
Yeah. So, obviously the story was important, but in order to get through it, you had to actually play the game. So, the games they each had pretty similar, like, styles of play that got changed in multiple ways over time. So BioShock 1, for the first game in the series, what did you think about the actual like gameplay, the mechanics, the way that you did stuff, weapons, those kind of things?
The main gameplay was, the guns and powers.
Yeah.
Essentially, which, changed throughout each game.
Right.
But they basically stayed the same, thematically.
Yeah, thematically.
But if I had to use one word to describe, especially BioShock 1, I would choose janky.
Clunky, yeah.
That's what I would say. It was mainly the aiming we all thought was very difficult.
Yeah.
Again, still kind of like that. And 2, the powers and the guns were confusing in the sense that you couldn't use them both at the same time. You had to either have your gun out or have your power out, then you had to switch back to your gun, and it felt... I would get apprehensive in combat situations while trying to switch. Unless I had, I'm using this power and this gun, then it was easy. But we need to use this power, I have to switch that, and then this gun's out of ammo, I have to check 3 different types of ammo for each gun, and it got, at least for me, combat got fairly overwhelming.
Yeah, it was like the combat was made to have it so you readied yourself before a fight.
Yeah.
But the fights were so sporadic and out of nowhere that you never really had a chance to prepare.
Yeah.
And when you were in a fight, you just were running around blasting people, trying not to die, as opposed to doing stuff tactically.
Yeah, trying, the tactic was how little ammo can you use to finish this thing.
Right.
Because the game was almost set up in sort of like a survival horror way.
Yeah.
With the
limited resources
in terms of your ammo and your health and your mana or your Eve refresh.
Well, funny enough, your powers didn't. I don't remember hitting a point where we're like, oh god, we're out of power again.
True.
Powers were the thing that we had the most of, and then bullets were just not a luxury in the game.
I think a big part of that, though, was just because you could only have a gun out or your power. Most of the time, we just opted for having a gun out, so we didn't use Eve a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like it might not be so much that we were given a lot of Eve, it's just we didn't use a lot of it. Especially if you were, if you centered your build around, fire or something.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You would have had to use it a lot more, but you couldn't really do that, because it didn't feel like there were enough resources to use the big resource expenders.
Yeah, we sort of, geared our resources around shock, and then some kind of weapon, and eventually we hit a point where we just went full on melee build with shock and the wrench with a freeze upgrade because we were just out of bullets.
It was way easier.
Yeah, it was so much easier. But I wonder if our experience with the resources would have been different if we tried to play a different way, because we experimented, I think, once really early on with doing something other than just shocking people and shooting them, and it lasted for maybe 2 combat sequences, and then we just settled right into our groove.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's always so, you're not sure whether or not you're even going to be able to use your build the next fight. Because if your build is centered around, the grenade launcher, it was the grenade launcher.
It was a grenade launcher.
Yeah. If you're out of grenades the next fight, you're boned.
Yeah.
Your build's useless.
That's why the melee build was a good choice.
Because you always had it ready.
You always had a wrench.
Yeah.
You can't run out of wrench. The thing was, going back to the powers is, and we didn't use them, but I never felt, while I was going through that game, to reference another game, Skyrim. Use powers in that game, you could murder people.
Yeah.
But in this game, the powers felt like more of a...
Yeah. It was they were comparable to a bullet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
lot of
but
guns.
not even like you. There was never a power where I was like, yeah, this will annihilate someone. It never felt cool to use them. You know, like
Yeah.
with the crossbow, you hit someone in the head with
Crossbow
that.
was dope.
You felt immediately
the spear
better.
gun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was the spear gun.
The spear gun and actually the crossbow too. I forgot that there was a crossbow in BioShock
The,
1.
the spear
Yeah.
gun was in 2.
In 2,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's like an arm attachment.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that, but the powers, they never did.
They didn't have the oomph.
They did great things for big daddies because they could stun.
Yeah.
And the fire,
Yeah.
granted, we didn't play with a lot of them. There are a lot of powers and a lot of combinations. In terms of mechanics, the combinations are great because there's a dozen ways you can play through. And we don't fully know how viable each of those options are because
Yeah.
we settled with our personal preference.
Yeah, going back to the oomph thing that you said, there was one power, which was controlling big daddies. That was pretty like, oh shit.
Yeah, that was
I
pretty
thought
good.
so.
It was
but there
cool.
wasn't. Yeah, there wasn't anything else. Like controlling the big daddy felt like it really did a lot. I mean, it used the whole bar of Eve.
Yeah.
Right.
But like you said, there wasn't much else that I felt had that big of an impact.
But
There was bees and
even-
freezing
It was, yeah,
things,
it was
but,
basically
like,
just like damage over time or a crowd control stun
yeah.
or
And
something
then there's like
that.
the other stuff, like controlling the security bots or making like turrets target a certain.
Yeah.
And those were like weird.
We
to
just
use.
bypassed. We immediately bypassed those.
Yeah.
We got them and went, "Oh, we're never going to use that."
Like it didn't even. I didn't even
required-
like want to try using
yeah,
it.
I think it required way too much planning ahead for how infrequent the combat sequences actually were.
Yeah.
You fought like 6 enemies and then you did nothing for a long time. And then you fought 2, and then there was a big you couldn't plan ahead far enough
Yeah.
to actually make use of those sorts of things. And the damage over time was so low, like especially on fire and the bees, like damage over time was so low, it didn't make a difference. You were better off just getting some sort of like stun on them and
Right.
just wailing on them as much as you could.
And you know, going the way of the stun, because like the shock felt really useful for the most part. Right?
Yeah.
I like if they moved away from if the fire or ice did something supplementary to just damage, then they probably could have been cooler. I mean, I know the ice slowed them. I don't know if it froze them.
Eventually, over time, it froze
them.
them solid. Yeah.
But like,
pretty quickly though. It wasn't like a 1 second thing. It was like you hit them with it, and they were pretty frozen.
but that's basically just like the same thing as electricity.
Yeah. Because
Right.
the moment you hit them, they unfroze.
Yeah.
Which you
well,
hit.
no, you could wail on them, and they had a
Yeah,
freeze bar that you could
they had
break
their health
them
bar.
along with a health bar. But that was
Essentially, it was the same. They were stunned for
Right.
a little bit,
right,
and you get to hit
and
them.
even the fire was actually
If they did
fairly
something
useless
else.
because the damage over time, they were
Wasn't
still
much.
fully functioning enemies, as in like they were burning and they were still like aiming down the sights and shooting at you
Yeah.
when their eyes were on fire.
Like, for example, if the fire made it so, like, enemies on fire took more damage or something.
Yeah.
That would be interesting, because you could use it on, like, Big Daddies or something as
But,
a
like,
boss.
if something's on fire in a game, usually it's panicked.
Yeah,
because
and
it's on
they're-
fire.
yeah.
When in this game,
Yeah.
they're like, "Hold on, let me stand you. I'm gonna aim at you now. I'm gonna shoot you right in the face."
The problem with that is it would be really similar to, like, electricity and
Yeah,
frost.
because
right?
then they
it's
would.
a, it's
they
a
would-
soft CC.
They would stand there panicking, and you could just wail on them.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I guess then it'd be too much of the same.
Actually, that was probably what Bees was, wasn't it? They were, like, freaking out.
Yeah, bees
We
was
didn't use it much,
It
but-
was a full CC ability. There was no damage.
Yeah.
Which, shockingly enough, it's fucking bees and there's no damage.
Bees.
You're not getting stung at all.
Yeah. We didn't really get to go too far into a lot of different builds.
And then there was also the supplementary utility powers, which were divided into 4
yeah, the
categories. There
passive.
was hacking, a power-based, I think a resource as in health and mana-based.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And I
there
think-
was...
A physical one.
Yeah, it was like
physical,
Physical-
medical, and
technological or
and
something,
tech.
right?
Yeah.
well, there was also
tech
like the
based.
one where your arm... There were 4 categories.
Well, the fourth
Either-
one was your plasmids.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's
Plasmids, physical tech, and medical. And I think this is a good segue into BioShock 2, because I think one of the things that happened in BioShock 2 that I liked was they really improved on that,
Yeah, the
that
passive.
passive system.
Having so many, you really had to pick and choose because you were like, oh god, which slot do we want to get? Which power do we need? But if we don't need that power, then we have to get a slot because you can only buy slots for individual ones. While in 2, they combined them all. It was
Yeah.
just, it was a big bar of like 40 slots.
Yeah.
Or
It was crazy. I think it was
20.
I think it was 24 or something like that. But it was enough, right?
It was
We
enough.
never ran out of slots. You just had to buy.
And actually,
A new
we
slot.
ended up buying them all.
Yeah.
Filling them all
Yeah.
up.
I remember you had a bunch of money and you just like pushed a bunch and,
And
you
then I
bought
ended
like
up-
a bunch of stuff
you
by
bought-
accident.
yeah,
I
you
bought
bought a bunch
2
of stuff.
powers back.
A bunch of stuff we didn't need. You used all of our atoms. We were planning to change our build, and we had it set up. We were like, okay, we need this, this, and this, and then you just bought a bunch of random shit, and we couldn't do our build.
Yeah.
And we.
But
It worked out in the end.
We had
did
enough
it.
slots where we could equip whatever the hell you bought anyways.
Yeah.
So.
And we filled it up because,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's,
Yeah, I think the strong suit of those games is the replayability in the number of builds that you
yeah.
could do. And in BioShock 2, they did improve the powers a lot. The
They
guns,
changed them a bit, yeah.
they improved the powers in the guns with really small quality of life stuff, I think. One being you can dual wield, more
Yeah.
or less. And the other one being they added a quick melee for your projectile weapons.
Yeah.
for everything. Yeah.
For everything had a quick melee and everything had a primary fire. And like the quick melee, I think I killed more people with the rivet gun bash than I did with actual rivets.
Than the rivet itself, yeah.
It felt so good. It was like satisfying to walk up and just nail people with that
Yeah.
thing.
I remember I would open
Boom.
doors by hitting them because
Yeah.
I just loved using it. Like,
They did a great job improving those mechanics, even if the actual like aiming still wasn't super
Yeah.
great. We discovered pretty early on that aiming down sights, like in BioShock 1 and 2, is probably you're essentially just making the game work harder for yourself
Yeah,
unnecessarily.
definitely.
You just upgrade the accuracy and just hip fire everything.
yeah.
Like
In addition to those two main like upgrade points, they also had the alternate fire of your powers where you charged it, right? You
Yeah.
held it. And that combined a lot of them, like the security bot one,
Yeah,
where
there
you
was-
could control the mechanical things, or you can hold it and summon a mechanical thing yourself.
Yeah, there was a lot of and I think the aggro, you could throw one.
Yeah.
You throw one and it aggroes enemies toward one person, or you can charge it up and throw it and it controls that
Take
person. And
control
those
of
were
them,
two
yeah.
separate powers in the first game. So they combined a lot of stuff and simplified a lot of things. That it made it a little easier to play.
Yeah.
And
Like the
and
the amount of like stuff available was exciting. Like
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh shit, a new plasmid, nice.
yeah,
I don't know how like useful all of them were, but it did feel cool to get like a new thing and be like, oh, I wonder if I can incorporate this into whatever build I'm doing.
The other thing was the plasmids were also kind of a little more useful, and while they
Yeah.
were tweaked and they felt better and they worked better, the dual wielding thing, basically your arm and your plasmid hand and your gun hand
You
are
look
up
ridiculous.
at the exact same
yeah,
time.
you're just running around with both your arms straight forward like Frankenstein's monster.
But it meant that you didn't have to worry about like, oh, what plasmid do I have up? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was obvious which ones you had equipped. You had them both there, so you didn't have to switch using the bumpers from your gun to your
Yeah.
plasmid hand to your gun. You could zap someone and shoot.
Yeah,
It-
and much like being able to see what gun you had equipped, you could see your left hand and see what plasmid
Yeah.
you had equipped. You didn't
Right.
have to look at like the
There-
corner of the screen
Yeah.
to see what icon.
There
it
were
was.
so many times in BioShock 1 where we'd flip over to our plasmids and it would just be the wrong one.
Yeah, we'd have
and
bees out.
Yeah, we'd be
Oh,
like,
shit.
oh, I wanted to shock that guy, and then we just like died because of it
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that.
It was fairly frustrating, and so generally the mechanics of BioShock 2 were better.
It felt a lot smoother, yeah, for sure.
It was definitely easier, but it still had you being a big daddy. In the first game, you fought a lot of small enemies because you were a normal person, and you fought a lot of kind of normal people, and the real enemies were the big daddies, and they were the tough guys. And in the second game, you were a big daddy, and one of the expectations I had was you're going to be, you should be
You're gonna
tanky.
be
You're a big
a
daddy.
tank,
yeah.
You fought these in the first game, and you were
They took
terrifying.
forever.
And in the second game, that's sort of not what happened. You
felt like you had the same like health.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you died just as quick, even
Like-
though you're a big underwater submarine.
And granted,
man.
what things they did well, they gave you bigger enemies. They introduced a big other big daddies were
Tiers
still
of
tough.
big daddies. Yeah.
There was these bulky tank-like guys that were tough.
Oh yeah, I forgot about those guys.
But the normal enemies still
Abigail.
they threw Abigails at you.
they were still just the normal enemies still did just as much, even though
Yeah.
in the first game Big Daddies demolished people.
And they had the big sisters,
Yeah.
which were genuinely terrifying enemies.
They were
Yeah.
genuinely terrifying, but I thought they got tiresome after a certain
Yeah,
point.
they were wicked cool
Because
to
they
start
were-
off with, but like, I agree.
After you beat the first one, like they were we have another special guest, the cat. But after the first one, you can't beat it, and it's supposed to be like the visual indicator of progress for the first part of the game. Like you finish the
Yeah.
tutorial, and now you can fight that thing, and you beat it, and it's like, cool, I beat it. But
There's more.
they're like timed. You have to fight them at a certain point in the game.
Well-
and after I think the last one that we fought after we did that guy, the guy in the giant test tube that we killed.
Oh yeah.
That one where we died like 1,000,000 times. I was so done with the big sisters.
Yeah, every time we fought them, it was just like, let's just fight them near the Vita Chamber because we're gonna die 17 times.
Yeah.
So you might as well just be close to where you're gonna respawn.
And one of the things that we did, we talked about boss fights in the first game, and they were all sort of different, but the mechanics, they never taught you anything about fighting. We said, when you fought final boss in BioShock 1.
Oh, Atlas.
Yeah.
Atlas.
Atlas.
And you went through,
Hulk form.
Yeah.
he summoned mobs in one stage and bots in another, and there was sort of no real mechanic connection. It didn't really teach you anything to bring to the boss fight.
Yeah,
If
I
that
know
makes
what you
sense.
mean. Yeah.
And the second game still didn't. There was no real bosses, and the only
Yeah.
boss you really fought, and this part really frustrated me, because you hit this cinematic. Your daughter is in the chamber. You realize she's your daughter. You need to save her. You need to get to her. And what do you fight? Not a special enemy, but two big sisters.
Yeah.
Not just one.
No, it was
just a-
3, wasn't it?
No, it was two.
It was two.
It was
only
2. Okay.
But it was just a recycled enemy that was annoying by itself.
Yeah, they
and it was
just
just
threw
kind of
another one.
like, you could have introduced, like, I've got a present for you, Big Daddy. It's this special Big Daddy that
Yeah.
I've created.
Super big sister.
Super big sister.
Like
Anything.
the
but
aunt.
Big aunt.
I like to call her Marge.
Homie.
Let me pinch your cheeks.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that fight. We literally just stood in the Vita Chamber.
Yeah.
And shot them until we died, and then over and over again.
Yeah.
But there was
Ran
no-
out of ammo. Right?
There was no part of that game where it was like, ooh, new interesting boss. It was
Yeah.
like in the first game you had different bosses and they.
Yeah, you had bosses with names, and you fought them basically one-on-one. This game's bosses were like wave.
Yeah,
They
the
were like-
final
it was-
boss was literally waves.
Yeah.
Like a bunch
Yeah.
of waves.
Hold them off
while you're fighting
Hold them
with
off
your
while I
sister.
heat up the water over here to launch the thing into the sky.
Yeah.
And then you fought 3 waves of enemies, and then you got in the thing and shot
left.
off to the surface.
And
yeah.
granted, that may be because in the first game, fighting larger enemies, you were a smaller person, and in the second game, what do you really pin up against a Big Daddy aside from
Just a bunch
multiple
of guys.
people? I
Yeah.
feel like it is a little bit hard in their situation because where do you stop creating bigger things? Granted, BioShock 3 had the fucking bird, so bigger things isn't really,
out
a
of the
limit
picture,
there.
yeah.
But it was also very cramped, so I mean,
Right, you can't
tiny
just-
hallways can't fit a
Right.
giant bird.
But so they did have to stop somewhere, and I kind of understand that.
Yeah.
But the two big I would have been more okay with waves of enemies as that kind of midpoint boss fight rather than two big sisters.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do think it lacked like a really cool boss fight. That is to say, though, or that's not to say that like endings don't need, or they don't need a cool
Yeah.
ending boss fight. Because I mean,
Right.
like for example, like Halo 3 is one of my favorite endings of a game.
Right, you just
and
drive
you're
away.
driving like it's not a boss fight. It's
No.
just something special. So I mean,
No, but there was no.
I do wish there was like an actual.
There was
boss,
no
though.
moment of like, yeah, this is awesome. Oh my
Yeah.
god, yeah. Oh no, I can't let him get to her from stop from heating up the water.
Or like learning mechanics.
There
for
was
bosses
never a
is always
moment
really
where
fun.
I fully felt attached to. In the first game, I kind of felt attached to the character. With the whole mind manipulation thing. In the second, I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm a big daddy. I gotta save the girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even when like you did something wrong, there was no real punishment. Like there was parts where you could save, where you could use the little sisters to harvest Adam from bodies, And there was no, like, the first time we died, we were like, oh, I hope she's not gone. And then she was just right in front of the chamber.
And
there
you
was
just
no
picked her up
punishment.
and picked her up and kept going.
Your
That was
punishment
a weird
was resetting.
That was a weird mechanic. The whole like harvesting thing.
Yeah,
Well,
like
it was reasonable,
the
though.
subsystem of that game
Yeah.
was really. It was the way that you got more Atom to buy plasmids and slots and passives.
Yeah.
But they locked it behind like waves. Again.
Yeah.
And
Again.
when
Again.
if you did both of the gathers and turned in the little sister, you had to fight a big sister.
I think it was every 3 little sisters, even if you didn't harvest, every 3 little
Yeah.
sisters that you rescue, you had to fight one big sister. I
Yeah.
think that it's
But
not. It wasn't a time
it's,
thing.
It still made yeah, the big sisters weren't time, but it still made those big sister fights mandatory.
Right. It was still a part where
Because you
like,
can't run away from them.
if you wanted Adam, you got to fight a big sister eventually.
Yeah. And I mean, conceptually, I think the idea is fine. Like, you can harvest as much Atom as you want, basically. It doesn't force you to do, like, 3 harvests or whatever.
Yeah,
Right.
well,
And then
it does to
return.
introduce it, and then you
Yeah.
can.
But, like, it still gets... It got old pretty fast.
Yeah.
Like,
And-
I remember the first level, we got all of the little sisters and fully did
Harvested.
fully harvested it all. But, like, the next level, we were just like, let's
Not-
do one.
Yeah.
And call it a
And
day.
the other annoying thing was I just remembered this. No enemy in the whole game had a weakness. There was no, if you stun a big sister and do this,
Well,
you'll take extra damage.
That
There
didn't-
was a little bit. The brute guys were weak to. I mean, there's the different.
There
ammo
was the
types,
ammo types, was the
Right.
weaknesses.
Yeah, I
but there
guess.
wasn't anything beyond that.
But yeah, it was just like if you had no ammo of that type, you were just kind of
Yeah.
out
It
of
wasn't-
luck, have fun grinding it out.
It
Yeah.
wasn't. They were weak to strategies. That never really happened. They were weak to bullets.
Yeah.
Like,
Bullets, my only weakness.
yeah, like it's cool to have like an idea to fight a boss. Like, oh, if I do this and use this ability and then I attack him with this weapon or whatever, that's cool.
Yeah.
But it really just boiled down to, do I have armor piercing rounds? No. Well, this boss fight's going to take 3 minutes longer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, all in all, I thought it was it was much more polished than BioShock 1. To be fair, I know
Yeah.
we're like shitting on it a lot, but there was just
We're critical because we like it.
Yeah.
right. And it was a second game, and you kind of, especially after the first story, you would expect this very intense story, and that was kind of missing. But I feel like they really focused on the mechanics for the second game, and they did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah. The mechanics were better. The story was a little worse.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is
in some
which is
ways.
fine.
Yeah.
Because then they overhauled everything
Everything.
for Infinite.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
talk about how Infinite went down in terms of its actual gameplay.
So I guess starting off with the
Well,
I'd
I say they overhauled everything. They still stuck with the
Gun and-
combination of
Right.
gun and special power, and this time in the vigors.
Right.
But the vigors function differently than the plasmids did to an extent.
Yeah.
You could straight up you couldn't buy any of them. You had to find them in the world, first of all. So you could walk right by a vigor and never get it, ever.
Well, to be fair, they did put them right in front of your face. You had
Yeah.
opportunities early to get them, but at a certain point, if you didn't find it, you would find it eventually.
Yeah.
Do you know if we missed any?
We didn't miss any.
Okay.
There was one we found toward pretty much the end of the game, which was the Spartan power.
Oh, yeah.
The bullet absorption and reflection.
Oh yeah, we
power.
never even used
The,
that. did we?
the Titanfall power.
Yeah.
You grab him and shoot him back
Titanfall
at him.
power.
It
Yeah.
sounds cool, but like in practicality, I don't know.
Well,
if
we were
anybody
already
used
so
it.
we were already so deep into our build anyway. We'd already invested in the charge build.
That was sweet.
That was
that was
amazing.
basically that game's like quick melee charge.
It was so cool.
Things they definitely overhauled. You can only have 2 weapons at once. There was no weapon wheel.
Yeah. However, you do get to keep the ammo for every weapon,
Yeah.
Right.
so you could switch whenever.
Right. So that was actually probably a good choice. The powers, they kind of had the same number of powers. That was pretty standard. They definitely, they had the same basic, they had a shock, they had a fire, they had a control. But the control, by the way, really annoying because it could get stuck on walls.
Yeah, it had
Stuck.
a stupid hitbox.
Yeah.
Like if you hit a little corner, it,
It had
just
an
exploded
actual-
and didn't
Well,
do
no,
anything.
It
The ghost
shot
just
out
sat there.
it shot out
and shat out a ghost.
It shat out like an actual model
Yeah.
that had to interact with the environment. And if you missed by like one teensy tiny polygon, it would get stuck on a wall
Yeah.
and then not do anything.
And
It would
used
be
up a lot of
way
heat, too.
cooler if it went through stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's a
It's
ghost.
ghost.
Like,
I
it
think
shouldn't hit
the way
walls
they-
and be like, ugh.
the way they could have made it better was it would because you had the charge up thing first before you got the upgrade for the second part
Yeah.
of the thing. You should be able to hold it right and then pick where you want it to go. Like have like the turret or whatever highlighted
Have it, like,
and then
home
boom
in.
and it would home into
Yeah.
whatever you
It would path its way there.
yeah, home into whatever you chose. That
That'd
way
be
you're
way cooler.
guaranteed to get value out of it. And plus, it wasn't an eternal takeover at all.
No,
it eventually ran out and turned hostile
And it
again,
just shot you again.
and then shot you. But
There was a buff that made people kill themselves, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But not machines.
Not
I don't
machines.
think.
no,
I mean, they could have done a lot with it. They could have even made it so, like, when you use it, you turn into the spirit or something, and then
Yeah.
you control it and walk into something. That'd be pretty cool, right?
Well, that would just be kind of a saving grace thing, because then you're low on health, you take over a body, and you're kind of safe. I feel like
Well, I
that
mean,
would've-
your character might still be, like, vulnerable or whatever.
Right, but then
you're just
you-
out of body and you move that.
But then you
That- yeah,
make yourself...
so then
I
you
like
can
that
go around
idea.
corners or something, but you're still vulnerable. So there's like a trade-off there.
Yeah.
Kind of like a homing missile in some games where you get to control the missile.
I see, yeah. But besides that power, the rest of them I thought were really cool. I thought that they had a charge ability that was super fun. It was a great...
I saw that
Yeah.
and I just I fell in
Football.
love with that.
It was amazing for closing gaps. In the first two games,
Yeah.
you were slow and there was
Yeah.
nothing you could do about it.
The game was a lot faster, which was nice.
Yes.
In
Definitely
BioShock
a
1
lot
and 2, you
faster.
felt like you were just charging around.
I
all the
loved
time.
how fast it felt. I
Yeah.
felt like that added a lot to my enjoyment of the game. Was the combat didn't take forever.
Especially in like the last sequence when you're on the ship and you were just like flying all over the
I know.
fucking place
Yeah,
at
it
like
was
10
awesome.
FPS.
That was
And it's
sick.
just like, what's happening?
I was loving
Yeah,
that.
Chris loved the
Plus, I
skylines.
was tweaking from my headache medication,
Yeah.
so the world was happening in slow motion anyway.
Like
it was like I was
4D.
I was in Adderall or something. I just I could see everything.
And the other thing, major improvement, gunplay. I feel like...
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, I feel like they focused more on you being a real person as opposed to a big daddy with 20 guns carrying on your back.
Yeah.
You had 2 guns.
Yeah.
You strap one to your back. You hold one in your hand.
And
you have
you're-
your powers. And the gunplay was a lot more fun. They had a auto-aim mechanic that initially was set to the left stick.
Yeah, the
press.
initial controls that it starts you with were awkward, but once you switched it to like the more generic like Call of Duty controls, it was a lot smoother.
It
Yeah.
was way smoother.
And
Because
speaking of Call of Duty, the 2 gun thing probably came from Call of Duty because
Yeah.
I think it released a little bit after. Actually,
It came out in 2013.
13, yeah. So like, Duty had already been like an established franchise.
Well,
by
Duty
that
was
point.
established in 2007 when BioShock 1 came out, but
Yeah.
they were going for a different thing. They were going for a different theme. This
They
one
wanted
was,
to go more safe with Infinite by like following things that had already worked.
Yeah.
right,
With the
especially
2 gun
controls.
system, the sprinting,
Sprinting.
zooming down the auto aim.
What sprinting mechanic? You mean there was no sprinting mechanic in that game?
No, that's my line, Chris. I'm the one who never used the sprint mechanic.
Some of us.
Some of us knew there was a sprint.
And like it really made it great because it sort of auto zoomed right to the throat. I think so.
So even if you didn't get the headshot, you landed your bullet.
But it was nice getting, especially because our weapons of choice, if you go back and watch our videos, were the carbine and the shotgun.
The single shots.
Yep.
We
Essentially.
went close range, long range, and the carbine felt nice.
Yeah.
You had moments where basically the tactic was to
Point in the general direction of a guy.
And quick scope.
And quick scope them. Ladies
Yeah.
loved it.
Ladies loved our quick scopes.
so that was kind of the strategy, which was a little weird, I think, and it could have been done better.
Yeah.
But that's totally fine for
Yeah.
2013.
I mean, I picked the guns that I thought felt the best.
Yeah.
So
We covered all of our bases. The carbine could go pretty long range. There was a sniper rifle in the
Yeah.
game, but it had like crazy sway, and it really
That's-
wasn't.
oh,
yeah,
and
I didn't
the,
like that at all.
The scope was a
the scope,
fisheye.
yeah, scope was fisheye,
It was-
and
yeah,
it was
super
like
awkward.
8x, which is it was so hard to aim. So
Yeah.
you got pretty decent range out of the carbine, and the shotgun was really great for fighting enemies up close. And what we ended up doing was we had shock again, and we used the bucking bronco, which basically just lifted people in the air for a little bit of time.
Thing to use.
That was pretty fun.
For like against the crow guys.
Well, it was fun against kind of anyone because they couldn't fight back. They literally just sat in the air, floating, like flailing. Whoa! Yeah. Just ran through with a shotgun.
And the shotgun felt really good when you shot him with it.
All the guns,
there's like a boof.
All the guns generally felt pretty good. The pistol felt like a pistol. The carbine, you kind of. I feel like it's mostly with sound that a gun feels good.
Tack, tack, tack. Yeah, I know the carbine
you
sound.
As opposed to like a pea shooter. With dip, 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 dip.
Yeah.
But
it felt nice, yeah.
It felt really good.
We didn't use all of the weapons, but...
Yeah, and that game, the other great thing is they carried over the replayability aspect of it. Because we used 2 weapons the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, we tried a third one for a little bit, but it was essentially the one that we already had. Just
it was
a little
automatic carbine.
An auto carbine. We could go grenade launcher,
sniper rifle.
Yeah, sniper rifle, and change up what plasmids, vigors we use.
Yeah,
and have a completely different experience.
Yeah, I mean the fact that we stayed on the same guns is probably more of a good thing, right? It meant we were satisfied enough with the guns that we didn't feel the need to change. Like I didn't feel like we were being weighed down by the carbine and shotgun choices.
No. And the other thing was. Nice. Adam played on PC originally with a mouse, and he used the pistol the whole time.
Yeah, I used pistol and carbine.
Right. So it's definitely a good replayability factor with the combinations you can use, and everything kind of felt really polished in that game. And the other thing was
the subsystem of the gear too added another level of replayability to it.
Real exploratory rewards besides story.
Yeah,
you could get gear and you could get upgrades to your shields, health, or mana bar.
And conceptually, I like that idea. Where it's just like if I go over to this corner of the room that's not necessary, I don't just find a voxophone. I might find a piece of gear that enhances stuff, which is cool. But the gear system in general felt a little weird.
It felt tacked on.
Yeah, it felt really tacked on.
Well, it was their replacement for the utility passives, instead of like extra armor passive or whatever, you had to find that gear. But it also kind of made you feel a little more human than a big day. You couldn't purchase these upgrades. You had to explore and find them, and then you could utilize them.
Yeah.
I feel like they wanted to focus more on the gunplay and the powers, and you as just a person.
Yeah,
plain and simple.
Adding on to focusing on the gunplay, Elizabeth gave you a lot of resources constantly.
Yeah. Elizabeth was one of the best mechanics.
So you were never actually worried about oh no, can I go into this next fight?
Yeah.
Am I going to get boned hard because I don't have any ammo?
Elizabeth always gave you a full clip of ammo, a clip or 2 clips, I think, of ammo for the gun you currently had equipped.
Yeah.
She gave you a full health med kit and a full salt refill, and also money when you weren't in combat.
Yeah.
And the other thing she added was the tear
the tear mechanic.
So you could grab in BioShock 2 you could summon your own droids to fly around and shoot stuff. In this one you could tear open a mosquito out of the sky or tear open a turret and then have that fight with you for whatever scenario you were in. You could tear open more med kits or more salts or extra weapons
or armor
or grappling hooks, and
which was nice
cover
based on your build. Like if you had a sniper build, that cover's probably pretty nice.
Yeah. If
you had a shotgun build, that skyline getting in close is really nice.
Yeah, and our gear gave us invincibility on skylines.
Yeah.
So we would just skyhook up to a thing and skyhook back down, and we'd have a full
sky rails.
Sky rails.
The sky rails you couldn't summon those.
Were the slide? Yeah,
the hooks were the things you could summon.
Rails were the slide around things. You could grab the hooks.
Yeah. Right.
But dismounting from the hooks gave us 2 seconds of full invincibility.
Yeah, it was pretty broken, but
it was super helpful though.
Well, but in a large fight, it was. We had moments when it was necessary. There
weren't the whole last sequence.
We couldn't just waltz through the game jump on a hook, jump off a hook. I'm gonna walk through this level now and blast you.
It was
and blast you.
It was more
holy shit!
Holy shit! I need to get up there right now because I'm going to die, kind of thing.
Yeah, you did have to actually execute the strategy of jumping up and down a bunch and actually aiming at
it made the game feel a lot more fun, at least for me to do that. Like
Yeah.
that was my favorite.
No, I agree,
my
yeah.
favorite thing to do was just jump around on those things and
Well,
fly
it was
around.
also fun to
Jump
jump
around.
on people and smack them on your dismount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They went flying.
Yeah.
You had like super Hulk strength with that. And one of the things that's really progressed that I've noticed the most throughout all these games, is the your two hands. So in the first game you had to switch between them. Second game they were both right in your face like a zombie. And in the third game it felt the most realistic where you had your two hands and they were both on your gun.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like when you used your power, you just simply raised your hand, used your power, and put it back in your gun, just like a normal person would do.
Though I do wish they took from BioShock 2 the visual notification, because in this game, like in BioShock 1, sometimes we used the wrong power because we didn't know what we had.
They had
equipped.
the occasional. There was an idle animation that Booker had where he would check out his hand and it would do something like the bucking bronco made all kinds of like rocks and shit show up in his hand and he looked at it like and then like put it back, but it was only idle.
Yeah.
Never did it in combat.
It happened when you were never in combat, but like if you were walking. Because I remember one time, and this freaked me out because we had the fire one equipped, which was
and
also kind of
all
fun.
his skin burned away.
well,
and then he just had a skeleton hand.
Well, it was that animation was like it glowed red, and I remember it was that idle animation, and it started up, and I went to aim down sights, and my sights were glowing red because the hand was right there.
My eyes are burning.
And I was like, why is everything red?
Yeah,
And that's just because of that.
if they just had something like your left hand always had some sort of particle effect on it or
Just
something.
like a little flower tag, One of those things. Oh, those are the dandelions. Oh, it's like
It might
in your
have,
wrist.
it might have been up by the salt bar, but it like as part of the HUD, it's easy to miss.
Yeah, you're not looking up in the corner the whole time. You're looking at the crosshair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there was little crow feathers sticking out of your hand or something, then it'd be nice.
But then, like, where do you stop? Like, is that distracting? Can that
you'd
distract
have to do
you?
it in such a way that it's not. In the
At
way,
a certain point, you can't just like expect the game to tell you everything. You kind of do have to be mindful of things, because otherwise, it's just like
it's obtrusive.
it kind of gets in your way.
Obtrusive.
Intrusive.
Intrusive. It would be
insertive.
Not insert.
Assertive.
So yeah. Speaking of having some kind of visual effect on stuff, what did we think of just the overall artistic style of this games and how they these games and how they went through over time? Because you can basically split it into BioShock 1 and 2 were similar, and then Infinite had its own thing. Yeah. What did you think of Rapture?
I think both the settings were pretty cool. Rapture, I really like Rapture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a little crowded, cramped. Yeah, but like.
But what do you?
That's reasonable, right?
There's no outdoor space in Rapture. Yeah. It's all buildings.
I mean, they had the like atrium or whatever at one point, but that's like the biggest space you could ever have. But underwater,
you're pretty far down. You have to have structural components and whatever.
So it makes sense, and I think it was cool. Like the cinematic opening when you're going down the elevator and you get to see all of Rapture. It's really cool. It's like it's like New York,
and it's
but
huge.
Underwater.
Yeah.
And there's like tunnels and stuff, glass tunnels, so you can
big whale.
Around. Yeah, there's a big whale.
Big
that was
dirty
sick.
whale.
Big dirty whale.
And same with BioShock 2. I mean, it was the same. I'm pretty sure they just used the same assets.
Yeah.
It actually would make it. Actually, there were certain parts in the map in BioShock 2 where you were like, it was the same place you'd been in BioShock 1, which I thought was really cool because it makes it a world,
Mm-hmm.
You also got to go outside.
Yes, you
as
did.
a big daddy.
Forcefully, sometimes, but you have to go outside.
The glass breaking. And
grab those disgusting slugs.
Yeah.
That scene was sick, though, where Big Sister, like, jumps across the glasses, scrapes it, and then lands and run out and breaks. Yeah. They had a lot of cool effects, and it was a really good-looking game through and through, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
BioShock Infinite, I think, it didn't really look much different. It was cleaner.
The color palette was way different.
Oh, it was brighter though.
Rapture was really
gloomy.
But it was never like a lot of times games that are gloomy end up being too dark to see what's happening.
Yeah,
didn't have that problem. It was lit, but really like
it was cool.
It was like
dystopian underwater.
Cool colors.
Yeah, it was
primarily blue and steel.
And meanwhile, Columbia is
the opposite.
It's literally in the clouds.
Sun, yeah.
So it's super bright, and it's also from a different period of time.
Yeah.
So the aesthetic of the clothing and the architecture and all that, like, that sort of stuff, it actually lends itself more to being in a better, more well lit place. I feel like the 1910s sort of like stuff. When I think about that, it's always kind of like bright pastels, really cheerful
Roaring
color,
20s kind of thing.
yeah, Roaring 20s style of thing.
That's exactly what I think about.
And then Rapture came about in that universe after the events of World War II. So you hit basically Great Depression.
Yeah, post Great Depression stuff.
Well, what was interesting
in the
is
50s.
I'm kind of
gangster style thing. Sorry, I cut you off.
No,
yeah, like Scatman John making an appearance in BioShock
2. The thing, I kind of wish we'd played the DLC. We didn't play the DLC for BioShock Infinite.
Yeah.
But in that game, that takes place when Rapture is alive, and I did watch a bit of gameplay. And it definitely, they changed the color palette, because everything's
they made it a little
working.
more
brighter, all the lights are working. Everyone's active, and
sense.
it was a lot, but it was still kind of the same, like, blues and greens because you're still underwater.
Yeah.
But it definitely lit up the world a lot more.
And I mean, BioShock 1, like we mentioned before, it was almost like a survival horror type game. So, that color palette fit the mood.
Yeah.
Even though there was only like one jump scare in that game, which was BioShock 2.
Which was unintentional.
BioShock 2 had more. Let me tell you a little something about BioShock 2 jump scares. I had to stop playing. Granted, I'm a big sissy when it comes to jump scares, but I literally, it was like a moment that I don't even think was supposed to scare you.
No, that shit was not scripted.
No, that enemy wandered in there by accident.
It was like broken. It was just standing there like an idiot. And then you looked at him and he's like, "Oh shit!"
Here's what happened was when you could see him when I was looking down.
Yeah.
And
I went, "What's that to your left?"
And then there was just and there was just. Was that an actual enemy or was that a scripted?
Yeah,
that
was
an
a
enemy.
splicer.
I think that was a scripted event.
No,
because the shadow before there was a shadow in front of the door.
That was scripted, I think.
Yeah.
No, maybe I don't even know if that was scripted
because you never found the enemy again. He was in a block. He was in a non-existent part of the map, so that was scripted. That was meant to scare you.
You could shoot through that window and kill him, though.
Yes, but that part of the map he was in, you could not get to.
Maybe
you couldn't. Remember, you tried to blast through it.
Yeah.
And it was.
Well, yeah. I mean, you couldn't get in there, but I mean, the like spider splicers came from unreachable parts of the map, anyways. So I don't know if.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Either way.
It's hilarious.
Pretty spooky stuff.
Bottom line is Robin shat himself.
That makes sense.
And then scripting cinematic stuff throughout the games.
Yeah.
BioShock 3 was super based on those, like...
It was a movie.
Those flying... it really was. It was a movie. There was, like, the flying moments. There was the big, wide shots as the tower falls and the city is... And Columbia is burning and war is happening.
Yeah. A lot of face-to-face conversations with Elizabeth. A lot of standing in elevators
big
with
eyeballs.
Elizabeth.
A lot of JPEG faces.
Her big anime eyeballs.
Big alien face.
BioShock 1 and 2.
Did one like have any cinematics beside the
cinematic?
Intro?
No. There was the intro, the exit, the end, and when you kill Andrew Ryan. Yeah. BioShock 2's cinematics were sprinkled throughout, but they were pretty brief. And the only real major ones were the intro before, and it was basically before major waves began.
Yeah, pretty
kind
much.
of.
Well, those weren't even cinematics.
They were in-game cinematics. They were scripted sequences.
Scripted sequences. So I think, well, again, Infinite pandered more to the modern gamer of.
They wanted a story.
Story.
I mean, which was fine because they already had like established mechanics from the first two games. Because like BioShock 1 had the initial mechanics. They had to see if it was going to work. BioShock 2 refined them, and then BioShock 3 just got to like utilize what worked and what didn't, and then they could focus on other stuff, right?
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, they didn't really have to be innovative with any of the stuff.
No, what
they already had it.
A few refinements, but the
there wasn't anything
style
new besides like the grappling hook. Really.
Yeah, but I mean, and that was kind of your melee weapon. But
yeah.
Overall, I thought it definitely got way more fun to play.
Yeah.
From the first to the last game.
Visually, it was more appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Like, I mean, even from past like just the setting, like all of the particle effects and stuff like that. Going back to like the ending sequence, there was a bunch of explosions and shit all over the place, and it felt like cool.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it was definitely
Yeah.
more cinematic.
yeah,
But what, again, like what you said, makes a lot of sense. They finally found what worked,
yeah,
and they refined it a little bit for the modern gamer, and it was amazing, and people loved that game, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I think
You,
Chris
you
really
loved
loved
it.
it.
I liked it.
yeah. I think it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember.
It's all right.
Well, the first time I played it, when I finished, I was kind of like, that was all right. It was more of like, well, okay, I thought it was good, but I thought it was more like a movie than like a video game. Like I enjoyed my experience with it. Like I went to like going to the movies, but I didn't feel like it was super in depth.
Were you
I guess.
invested in it?
I was invested enough, right? Like I liked the
Like
game.
as the character, were you like when something happened? Did you feel a sense of?
Not-
Did you ever feel a sense of urgency?
Like not really. I mean, I did initially a little bit, but once like the whole time stuff came in. Okay, and the initial time stuff I was actually kind of invested. Like when you found the weapons dealer or weapon maker. What was his name?
Right when it right when
Chen.
it first got introduced.
That was like, oh, that's pretty cool. When you see him and like his nose is bleeding and he's
yeah,
glitching out, and I was like, oh, that's pretty
he's
cool.
in his warehouse and there's nothing and he's still tinkering with
Yeah,
stuff.
but then it's like it gets more and more weird, and I was like,
you
Yeah.
fight a ghost of
I can't
Elizabeth's
relate
mom
anymore.
and it's like
That was a funny moment.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's moments where like, why can't I just blow up this door? Why do I need to find a ghost?
Yeah.
blow it up
and then
for
the
you.
ghost blows it up.
And then he
yeah.
blows it up anyways.
That bit was supposed to be you find her hand and she scans in her handprint to get you through the door, but she just
Yeah.
blasts right through it.
Anyways, yeah.
So overall, there was no playing. I mean, personally, I felt a little bit of connection to Booker, but you know, like some games you play, and you hit that moment and you stop exploring the environment, and you kind of feel that personal connection of even though there's no real time limit, you want to rush this destination to complete your goal.
Yeah.
There was kind of a lack of that in all the games.
Mm-hmm.
At least I think there was.
Yeah,
there was
I
never
agree.
a moment where I was like, Elizabeth is taken. I'm gonna go search that body though because I know I have time to do it.
Yeah.
You know, there was
Especially in the first two games where you needed the resources.
yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been nice to have, I think, maybe not in the first two because there was no sprint mechanic and that made it kind of tough. But I think that it would have been nice to have an actual timed event, not like a quick time, but like you have 1 minute
Like-
to do this thing.
Like
because
the
this
ending
is
of
urgent.
Halo 1,
Exactly.
where we're driving in the Warthog.
Yeah, and
Everything's blowing up around you. And
Yeah,
it's
that's
like, oh shit, I gotta go.
that's a sense of like urgency. That's sort of like an attachment to the game.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it needed
So
more
I think
of that.
all of them kind of missed that, but the stories were still really good overall.
I think they were fun.
Yeah. What did you? So we can wind down a little bit now. I think we've covered a lot. The way that I think we can close this off is let's just talk about what we think, which games we thought were the best in
Each
like,
category.
certain categories. So like,
Yeah.
Robin, you can start. What game do you think had the best story overall, or how would you rate each game's story compared to one another? And you can use whatever rating system you want.
6 out of 7 bananas.
I prefer barrels. I prefer barrel rings, those little metal rings. Overall, I think 2 was definitely the least powerful story. I felt like I was just kind of playing through. That may be because we kind of went into it from 1 and it was kind of the same thing, and I was a little bit tired of it. And the game just wasn't super fun for me personally. I mostly wasn't that great at it, but that's beside the point. BioShock, it's weird when you get between BioShock 1 and Infinite because Infinite definitely had a lot of cool things. We can't deny that. They were confusing. And 1 had this not much story, but the story that was there was powerful and it made me think and it made me like feel for the character. Overall, I think I honestly am kind of torn
Yeah.
between Infinite and 1 for those reasons, just because like I can't, they each have their very strong points. I was really connected to the characters in Infinite, and 1 story punched me right in the mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Adam?
I basically agree with what you said. I liked... It's hard because like BioShock 1 and BioShock Infinite kind of accomplish different things, like you said, throughout the story. So it's hard to like really rate them next to each other. As far as like the setting goes, I mean, even the setting are both really cool. It's hard to say. I mean, I agree that BioShock 2 was probably the least, fun story.
Yeah.
It did feel like it kind of dragged on, and you're just going to find your sister, or your daughter. You haven't found your daughter. Find your daughter. You still haven't found your daughter. Hey, look, it's your daughter. No, you didn't find her yet.
Oh, here she is, though.
But there she is.
And now you leave. Now
you leave. BioShock Infinite started out both BioShock Infinite and BioShock 1 got me hooked to the story pretty quickly. They were both interesting concepts. BioShock Infinite felt better in the terms of it felt more alive than BioShock 1. But I mean, BioShock 1 was supposed to feel like a destroyed Atlantis.
Yeah.
So, I probably would say I like BioShock Infinite better, but it did a lot of weird things.
Yeah,
near the end.
that's
so
why I was torn.
it's hard to really. I just like different aspects better.
Yeah,
Game,
I'm
really.
I'm actually in the same boat as Adam. I agree with both of you that I think BioShock 2 was the weakest. I would say least impactful story.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
BioShock Infinite, I liked that. I like BioShock Infinite more than I liked what BioShock 1 brought. However, I was disappointed with the way that BioShock Infinite ended.
Yeah. The way
I rank BioShock Infinite at the top of my thing. I say BioShock Infinite story, very good.
Yeah.
But I was disappointed in the ending. BioShock 1 I thought had a good story, and BioShock 2 I thought was the least impactful.
Yeah, I think Infinite had a bigger potential than BioShock 1. If you rate it out of 100 points, I think BioShock 1 probably could have only gone to 80 points, but BioShock Infinite could go to 100 points.
Yeah.
But because they messed up some of the story things, it was lower than it could have been.
Yeah.
Overall, I think, if you do the research on the world,
Yeah.
they connected it all very well, even if it's scattered.
Yeah.
They connected it all, but
they
it's
did make
Yeah.
solid connections, even if they used the glue of the
I
tears.
feel like to connect everything, I would
plot-
need one of those boards.
Red
with
string
strings.
string boards, yeah.
like in Charlie and It's Always Sunny when he's looking
Yeah.
at Pepe Sylvia. It's just it's like, what the fuck is all this?
So, overall mechanics.
Yeah, Robin, rank your mechanics. Which game had the best mechanics? Which game had the worst?
Infinite by far had the best out of all of them. They definitely progressed solidly throughout the games.
Yeah.
1 was janky,
Yeah.
2 was refined,
One-
and
I think they just refined it after each
3
iteration,
years.
really.
We had a long conversation about this on this very podcast. I think I'll speak for all of us and say BioShock Infinite had the most enjoyable mechanics. BioShock 2 was improved, but still kind of janky. BioShock 1 was incredibly janky, but it didn't...
It introduced interesting new mechanics that hadn't really been explored.
really
Yeah.
cool mechanics.
They were
overall.
innovative at the very least.
The powers were really cool and different thing. I don't think there were any other
What I
things.
will say is, which we mentioned before, is I like the passives a lot better in BioShock 2 than Infinite. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe even the upgrades in BioShock 2 better. Because, in BioShock 2, you had things like the security bots, where upgrading at each level allowed you to have one more security bot summoned, which, it felt nice. Whereas in,
but in 3 they had cool
Infinite,
little...
you really only had, the gun.
No, there were
upgrades.
power. Remember our charge upgrade that refilled... it never...
True.
It never truly advanced on, the stage 1 of the rush is you hit them. The stage 2 of the rush is you knock them back and
Yeah,
stun them.
that's what I'm talking about.
It was
if they
like
had something
it
like
recharged
that.
your shields for a random reason, and there was no real connection. But you could still do the purchasable upgrades.
Yeah, if the third level charge, knocked them 100 feet away or something, that'd be fucking sweet. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That'd be really cool.
But for the most part, I liked Infinite the best.
Out of all 3 Infinite, I think we
Mechanics.
all can agree.
And I'd say the same mechanically as well.
Yeah.
And in terms of setting, let's do the artistic piece between Rapture and Columbia.
Yeah.
Okay, so Robin, did you prefer Rapture or Columbia artistically?
It's really hard.
That's a tough thing, just because in this case especially it's apples and oranges, because they're one's in the sky,
they're
one's
so
underground.
different. Yeah.
There's 2 very different stories for the world, and I feel like that comes into play very much when you're talking about a world is the story that exists within it.
Mm-hmm.
How well does everything fit? And I thought all of the racial controversy in Colombia very much fit the atmosphere, and all the like dystopia very much fit the underwater, trapped civilization. So I don't.
Yeah.
If I really had to pick one, I would say Colombia, just because it felt cooler to stand on a ledge and look over Colombia, this floating city with the skylines, and the world was more developed, and there were more people, there were more interactions, and so I would have to go for Colombia, but Rapture is really not far.
Where would you want to? Here we can add a second thing. Where would you want to live?
As this is gonna sound terrible to say, as a white male.
Yeah, I mean, you're either living in like basically the 1910s in the sky.
Yeah.
Wait,
or
are we talking
in underground destroyed utopia?
In-game
Is it
Rapture?
alive
Rapture or dead Rapture?
In game, you get dropped into one place and you now have to be there.
Well, fuck it.
Probably Colombia.
Yeah.
Colombia.
I wouldn't
That-
die.
Okay,
I wouldn't.
Living Rapture or Columbia. We'll do that one then.
That's hard. I mean, I haven't experienced living Rapture, so I don't know.
No, I'm gonna say if it's thriving and it isn't gonna like destroy itself, and I'm not gonna die in the process, I would pick Rapture because I'm more comfortable being underwater than I am a million feet up in the air.
I'm the opposite, actually. I feel like living underwater. See, I have what is it called? Thalassophobia or something, which is the fear of like deep water or something like that. Basically, big looming things underwater creep me out. I feel like living under Rapture, I would just be like, all the
Big
time.
dirty whale coming up to the window, you'd piss yourself.
I'd freak out.
I'd be more comfortable in a live Rapture.
Yeah. But going back to what was like more aesthetically pleasing,
Columbia was.
I liked Columbia because it was like comfy feeling, right? It was really nice. It like visually, it felt really nice. Like I remember when I first played the game, I took some screenshots just because they were so cool.
Yes.
Of like the big jacked
Ben
George
Franklin.
Washington or Ben Franklin holding like the key.
Yeah.
You know. But I think Rapture was stronger in the sense that of what it was like trying to fulfill. Like it was supposed to be creepy and dank.
Oh yeah, it did that very well.
Yeah.
Very moist.
Infinite didn't really need its setting, right? Like the whole sky bit didn't really
That's true.
matter. Like
Yeah.
it could have just taken place in New York for all I care, right?
Oh yeah, totally.
It wouldn't have made much of a difference.
Yeah.
So as far as like driving the story, I think Rapture was better.
Yeah.
But like, it looked cool.
Columbia
They had
was-
really
Columbia
cool
was
lighting.
prettier.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
prettier.
Yeah, you brought up something I hadn't been thinking about in terms of like what it was supposed to accomplish with the artistic choices. I was thinking more like straight up which one looked better, and I was going to say Columbia, but I think in terms of what it's trying to accomplish, I do prefer Rapture. So I would be in the same vein as you, actually. I think our Rapture, the way that Rapture was designed, fits so well for what it was trying to do that even though I think Columbia looks nicer, that the Rapture, the way that they set it up, means more to me.
Yeah, it's more meaningful.
Yeah.
Whereas Infinite's just kind of like a place.
Yeah.
It looks really cool. It's an awesome place, but like it's still just a place.
All right, I'll switch mine.
Yeah.
We're all in agreement. We're all in agreement on that one again.
So Infinite, best mechanics. Rapture was the best world. It was most developed world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best driving
Force.
force.
Driving world.
Driving something.
Everything. And then story.
Story, probably BioShock Infinite. It was just kind of disappointing
Yeah.
at times.
Yeah.
It didn't.
It could have been better than it was.
It didn't fulfill all its potential.
But it was still the best, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, another thing about it, one could have had the most potential for a story if they had put more beings in the world, because that twist that's why I'm so split. Is that twist really just
Yeah.
you get tricked?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that
Actually,
no,
no, I'll tell you this. Infinite's story is the best. BioShock 1's concept is the best. For a story.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't all there.
Yeah. It like flowed better.
Yeah.
Like all of the concept basically of everything from the art to the mechanics to the story flowed really well in BioShock 1.
Like if you took Infinite's mechanics and characters and you put the concept of 1 kind of in there as you get tricked at, let's say like you get
Yeah.
led as a player to steal Elizabeth, and then at the end you realize that you've been mind controlled to steal Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And you beat someone in with a 5-iron.
The idealized BioShock game is the gameplay and mechanics of Infinite in Rapture, following the story of BioShock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, with the plot twist that Comstock is Booker, they could have done something with that, right?
Yeah.
They could have had it be like Comstock was letting you steal Elizabeth the whole time to do something.
But
because
right?
he knew that...
Because he knew this was going to happen because
And
it
it
already
would-
happened to him or something,
Yeah.
you know?
Right, but even that wouldn't have been as cool as having a separate antagonist that's not you in a different reality. I feel like that whole, it just distorts
I
things.
do agree with
and
that.
then, like, you kill him, but what about the other? You bash his head in with a driver, but what about the other Comstock?
There's a billion Elizabeths, aren't there a billion Comstocks?
Yeah.
Killing this one guy, what's that going to do?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that would have been a really, really cool game to have that concept with Infinite's mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to close out, how about if you were to play one of these games again, what would you play?
Infinite.
I would play Infinite again.
Yeah, I think I'm actually tied on Infinite and 2. Because there's a lot of other things I wanted to try in 2, build-wise. Just because you have to invest a lot
Yeah.
for builds in BioShock 2. Infinite's probably... I mean, it's a smoother experience than BioShock 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, BioShock 2, you have to do a lot of the same stuff over and over again, you know?
I think Infinite, now that I've played Infinite, I don't know if I'd be able to go back to the pace of those older games and still enjoy it.
Yeah, that's
It's-
exactly what I'm trying to say.
I loved the speed and the feel of Infinite so much. Going back, I'd be like, I really wish I could like
let's hurry this along.
yeah.
Right?
It's more like I really wish I could do some sick Skyline combos kind of
Yeah.
thing. I really without
do
the
agree with
Skylines, I don't know if I'd be able to enjoy it.
Well,
Yeah.
but then
The
in
combat
that
is
case, do you take away the kind of replayability from Infinite? Because the other thing I just thought about was, with that powerful a story, how much replay value does it really have? You can go with different combos and anything and everything, but it's still, we all agree, I think, that you're playing a movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many times
That
can
is
you watch
true.
that movie, even
Like-
if you have a different kind of popcorn?
Realistically, I don't know if I'd ever going to go back to any of these games.
Well, no.
But,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I did play Infinite twice. So, I guess that does answer my question about which game I would want to go back to.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, like, I would like to see what BioShock 2 has to offer. Like, that we didn't experience. But I'm pretty sure I would just enjoy Infinite more.
Yeah.
Infinitely more, would you say?
A little bit less than infinitely.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of things we didn't
Yeah.
try and a lot of power combos. I wanted to use that tentacle power. What was it?
Oh, yeah.
We used the big Cthulhu.
Yeah,
Oh,
we didn't do anything with that.
Yeah, or I would have really liked, well, it is kind of frustrating. I wish one thing that would have made it cool was if you chose your beginning power out of like,
Yeah.
a set. Because
That
then
would be
I would
cool.
have loved to pick the Spartan, the Titanfall shield as my first power. And I would like to play through the game with that.
That
I
happens
think
with a lot of games.
That would make it really cool to have that choice at the beginning of the game. What power do you want to start off with?
Same
Do you
with
want
weapons.
Control?
Because, like, we didn't get the rocket launcher or whatever to the very end.
But
you know?
that gets into a whole other thing of, like, you have an advancement of enemy strength and an advancement of weapon strength.
Yeah.
And you can't give someone an RPG at the beginning of the game and make them fight a foot soldier with a billy club. Because that's just not fair.
That is true. I mean, maybe it could have been expanded more. Like,
I'm sure.
instead of just the pistol, you could choose from, like, the rifle or the sniper rifle or
Oh,
something.
yeah, a sniper, a pistol, or a shotgun. That'd be a good
I do
starting
agree
choice.
with the concept of having a different start. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Mostly just with the power, because it seems like their strongest mechanic.
Yeah. You know what these games could do for? Or a little Pokemon Emerald randomizer. You start off.
BioShock
Yeah, where you
randomizer.
start off with the grenade
Start
launcher.
start off with the grenade launcher
And tentacles.
and the tentacle power, and then you go.
Actually, you know, that would be really cool if they changed the coding so that, like, you couldn't really, like, change weapons and you couldn't pick up weapons or extra powers and you were stuck with 2 powers.
Yeah,
for
I'm sure
kinda,
you could
like-
mod something in like that, but
Yeah.
That'd be pretty sweet. Hey, everyone, if you're listening to this, first
Mod
of all,
it.
thank you. And second of all, get to modding if you can do it.
But anyways, overall, I thought the series was pretty good.
I thought
I'm
it was,
glad I played it.
yeah,
it was original. Very
Yeah.
original in terms of play and themes.
Yeah, people bring up BioShock 1 and 2 all the time. about like, oh, I loved that game as a kid, so I'm glad I actually got to like experience them both.
Me too. I played Infinite and I looked at buying 1 and 2, but I never really felt like investing it. But now that I've played them, I'm very happy that I know like what they are and how they play and everything. And the advancement of the games.
Yeah.
Good job, 2K.
Nice. Yeah.
Good job, 2K. Good job, Irrational.
You're like
Rest
Irrational, then
in
2K.
peace.
So thank you everyone so much for joining us on this lovely BioShock wrap-up podcast.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed yourselves as much as I enjoyed myself.
Yeah. Playing those games were a good time.
Yeah.
They were interesting.
Yeah, stick around and we'll be playing other games, doing other podcasts for other series in the future. I don't know what, but you know, it's a surprise.
It's totally random if even we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe.
We'll see you later, folks.
Thanks for sticking around.